The night her husband died, the desert swallowed its own breath. Naya was running before she understood she had decided to run. The ground tore at her bare feet, thorns biting skin she could no longer feel. Smoke crawled low across the sand, carrying the stench of burned hide and gunpowder, a smell that did not belong to the land of her people. Shouts cracked through the dark, harsh, sharp-edged words in a language she had learned to fear. Somewhere behind her, horses screamed, and a rifle answered with thunder. Tokala's name burned in her chest. She turned once, just once, because love is stronger than sense. Moonlight spilled over the clearing, pale and cruel, and she saw him there. Not standing, not fighting, he was on his knees, one hand pressed to his chest as if trying to hold his heart inside himself. Blood soaked his shirt, black in the silver light. A man stood opposite him, tall and still, revolver extended like an accusation. The scar on that man's cheek caught the moon, a white slash of certainty. The gun fired. Naya's scream tore out of her, thin and useless against the noise of the world. Tokala fell forward into the dust, his braids slipping over his shoulder, his body striking the earth with a sound she would hear for the rest of her life. The man with the scar lowered his weapon, already turning away, already done. Something struck Naya from behind. Pain exploded across her side, white and blinding, and she pitched forward. The stars shattered. The last thing she felt was the sand against her cheek, warm with the day's memory, before the dark took her. She dreamed of waters she could not reach. Of Tokala calling her name from the other side of a river swollen with red. When consciousness returned, it did so reluctantly, as if offended by the idea of her survival. Pain arrived first, settling deep into her bones with a slow, relentless throb. Each breath scraped her ribs raw. She tried to move and failed, a sharp gasp tearing free as the world swam. The smell was wrong. Her eyes fluttered open. Above her was not sky but wood, smooth boards fitted together with care. Light filtered in through a small window, dust dancing in it like insects. The air held soap, leather, and the bitter edge of whiskey. This was not a lodge. This was not her home. Panic surged, and with it another wave of pain. She swallowed it down and turned her head. A man sat near the bed, slouched in a chair as if exhaustion had finally claimed him. His boots were still on, one ankle crossed over the other. A hat shadowed his face, but even half seen, she knew him. The line of his shoulders. The scar she had memorized in an instant of horror. A revolver lay across his knee, his fingers resting loose but ready. Her breath hitched, loud in the quiet room. His head snapped up. In one smooth motion, he was on his feet, gun raised, eyes sharp and awake. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other across the small space. Then recognition flickered, and he lowered the weapon slowly. "You're awake," he said. His voice was rough, as if scraped by dust and sleepless nights. "Good, good." The word rang strangely in her ears. Rage flared, hot enough to burn through the pain. She tried to sit up and nearly blacked out. The room tilted, her vision tunneling. Strong hands caught her shoulders before she fell back. His grip was firm but careful, like he knew exactly how much pressure she could bear. He eased her down, arranging the blanket without asking, without hesitation. "Don't," she rasped, though the protest was weak. "Easy," he said. "You'll tear something." She glared at him, breath shallow, chest heaving. Up close, his eyes were the color of storm clouds, hard but not empty. The scar on his cheek looked older than she had thought, pale against sun-darkened skin. "Why?" The word scraped out of her throat, carrying every question she could not shape. He straightened, giving her space again. "Because you were dying," he said simply. "And I wasn't done burying people for the night. You killed my husband." Her voice shook, but it did not break. His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might deny it, might dress the truth in lies the way men like him often did. He did not. "He drew first," he said. "I fired faster. You came to our land. And your men crossed ours." He shot back, then stopped himself. His shoulders sagged a fraction. "This isn't about whose dirt we were standing on anymore." Naya laughed, a sound so raw it hurt her ribs. "I should be dead." He nodded. "They thought you were." The words sank into her like cold water. "They, my men." He hesitated. "I didn't tell them you were alive." Her eyes widened, fear twisted with confusion. "Why?" "Because they would have finished what the desert started." His gaze held hers, unblinking. "And because I don't make a habit of letting wounded women die in the sand." Silence stretched. Somewhere outside, a bird called, bright and ordinary, an insult to the night she remembered. Naya's chest tightened, grief swelling until it threatened to drown her. Tokala, she whispered. Something crossed the man's face then, regret, perhaps, or the shadow of it. He turned away, setting the revolver on a table with deliberate care. Sleep, he said, quieter now. You've got cracked ribs and a bullet crease along your side. Doctor patched you as best he could. Doctor, she echoed faintly. In whose house? He looked back at her. Mine. The truth settled heavily around them. She was in the bed of the man who had ended her life as she knew it. The sheets were clean, tucked carefully around her body. She hated the comfort of it. Hated that her blood had not stained his floor, that her death had not been allowed its dignity. I should hate you, she said. You do, he replied. And you're entitled to it. Her eyes burned, exhaustion dragging her under even as anger tried to keep her awake. The ceiling blurred. Before the dark took her again, she saw him return to the chair, saw him pull his hat low and keep watch, the revolver within reach. Naya slept, not because she trusted him, but because her body demanded it. And in her dreams, the river still ran red, but now there was a shore on the other side, and she was not alone as she struggled toward it. Morning came slowly, like the land itself was unsure whether to welcome her back. Naya woke to pale light and the sound of wind worrying the walls. For a moment, she did not know where she was, only that pain lived in her ribs and grief sat heavier still. Then memory rushed in. Tokala's fall, the scarred man's face, the bed that was not hers. Her hand tightened in the blanket as if she might tear it free and with it the truth. She forced herself to breathe, shallow and measured. Each rise of her chest reminded her she was alive, an idea that still felt like an insult to the dead. Rourke was not in the room. The chair by the bed stood empty, hat and revolver gone. For a wild heartbeat she wondered if she had been abandoned, left to wake and die alone after all. Then she heard movement beyond the door, the scrape of a chair, the clink of metal, and the smell of food drifted in, thin but real. Her stomach tightened painfully. She hated that too. When he entered, he moved like a man who had already learned the shape of the space around her. He set a bowl on the small table, steam curling upward, and placed a cup beside it. Broth, he said. Doctor said start there. She stared at it. The simple kindness felt heavier than cruelty. Why are you still here? Because you're not steady enough to be alone. He paused. And because I said I would be. She took the cup with shaking hands and drank despite herself. Warmth spread through her, loosening something she had held tight since the night of the attack. Tears blurred her vision. She looked away, ashamed of the weakness. The days that followed fell into a quiet rhythm she had never asked for. Rourke checked her bandages, brought water, left space when she demanded it with silence. A doctor came once more, a thin man with kind eyes who spoke little and asked no questions about who she was or why she was there. When he left, Naya realized how deliberate that silence was. On the third day, she woke to pain sharp enough to steal her breath. Fever burned through her, the room tilting and sliding like sand underfoot. She reached for the cup on the table and missed, her fingers closing on air. The sound of it hitting the floor seemed impossibly loud. Rourke was there almost instantly. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, bracing her against his chest while he steadied her breathing with a hand at her back. His heartbeat was strong, stubborn, unyielding. Easy, he murmured. I've got you. The words struck her harder than the pain. She pressed her face into his shirt, the smell of dust and leather grounding her against the pull of darkness. I should kill you, she whispered, the confession slipping free before she could stop it. I know, he said, without anger. When you're strong enough, I won't stop you. She slept after that, her fever breaking sometime before dawn. When she woke, the room felt clearer, the edges sharper. Rourke sat by the bed again, awake, eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. Something shifted between them then, not forgiveness, not understanding, but a truce born of survival. As her strength returned, she learned the shape of his world. The house stood alone on a low rise, cattle fencing stretching toward a horizon that seemed to go on forever. The land was harsh but honest, asking effort for every gift it gave. She found she understood that kind of bargain. Rourke spoke more as the days lengthened. Not in confessions, but in fragments. He told her his name, and she tasted it before answering with her own. He told her about the scar on his cheek, earned in a fight he had started and finished before he knew better. He told her about the grave behind the barn, small and weathered, and the promise he had failed to keep. She told him nothing at first. Then, one evening, she spoke Tokala's name aloud without breaking, and that felt like a victory. When she could stand, Rourke offered his arm and waited for her to decide. The first step outside stole her breath more than any pain. The sky stretched wide and indifferent above her, the sun warm on her skin. She swayed, and his grip tightened, steady as the earth beneath them. I can walk, she said sharply. I know, he replied. I'm just here in case. She learned the lay of the land inch by inch. The creak of the fence gate. The way the wind changed direction near dusk. The sound of horses in the distance, a reminder of the night she had lost everything and somehow gained something she did not yet have a name for. One evening, she asked the question she had been circling like a wary animal. Why didn't you finish it? Rourke leaned against the fence, eyes on the horizon. Because I saw you fall, he said. And because I've seen enough ghosts to know when death has taken its share. She watched him then, really watched him, and saw not a monster but a man shaped by choices he could not undo. The knowledge did not ease her grief, but it sharpened it into something she could carry. Weeks passed. She rode again, stiff and careful, the saddle unfamiliar beneath her. Rourke rode beside her, never ahead, matching her pace. Without comment, when her strength failed, he stopped. When she pressed on, he let her. One night, as the sun bled out over the hills, Naya stood alone in the small room that had been hers. Tokala's knife lay on the table, cleaned and oiled, its familiar weight a comfort and a curse. She wrapped her fingers around the hilt and closed her eyes. She saw her husband smile, felt the press of his hand at her back. She saw the flash of a gun and the man who held it. She saw herself waking in this bed, alive against all sense. Rourke appeared in the doorway, silent as he always was. He did not reach for the gun at his side. He did not speak. I will leave at dawn, she said. He nodded once. I'll see you to the river. Her grip tightened on the knife. The choice hovered between them, sharp and bright. Slowly, deliberately, she set the blade down. Not forgiveness. Not mercy. Survival. At dawn, the desert exhaled. They rode together in the pale light, the river glinting ahead like a promise neither of them could name. When they reached it, Rourke stopped. This is far enough, he said. Naya slid from the saddle. She met his gaze one last time, then turned toward the water. Each step carried her farther from the night she had died and closer to the life she would have to build from what remained. She did not look back.